All right, let's watch Vid versus Addy. Looks like Addy had first turn and went for 6178 in 3. Vid could take that from 6, but could not take that from 2. But Addy had 5766 to recapture from 2 as needed. It looks like Vid also, the natural way to set up if you don't have 2 is to go in 1. But even if Vid had that here, which I guess he did with something like 8656, very unappealing. Maybe 4874 would have been the better way to do it. But even that's going to set up some cards of Addies as well. But very unappealing to do in general because the hand is so uncomfortable going up that making the game go more in the upward direction is just not an appealing option. Now, Vid did use up his only good capture on Addy's starter because 8581 gets comboed back, but 8656 did not. So that leaves Addy with a lot of choices here. On the other hand, Addy can't really attack Vid starter either. So my kind of heuristic for opposite corners is if it's harder to take yours, you're probably ahead. But also, as long as it's somewhat difficult for them to take yours, you can't be too far behind. Specifically from the second turn perspective, that if their corner is completely safe, but your corner challenges them at least a bit, you should be able to hold a tie. It should be enough to tie if you can play a good move on your next move as well. Here, this definitely has achieved more than that. So even though I think Addy's starter looks really strong and Vid has little to no play against it. Oh, I just noticed Addy has 4. I didn't notice 8764 had 4. That does change things a bit. Because that means Addy has play against it. Now, it's still somewhat challenging. One thing Addy could do is go in 9, saying, though he doesn't really have a good card for 9, so maybe scratch that. I was thinking the idea of going in 9 is saying, is just getting rid of the square that punishes 8. I want to go 8 at some point, but you combo me back from 9, so I will get rid of 9, so I have the threat of going in 8. Alright, I don't really see a way I want to interact immediately, so if I'm Addy here, I'd probably just go in 2 or 6. Probably 6, because it doesn't concede any kind of safety in 9. So probably just drop something in 6. Um, but a little scary to drop something in 6, because you don't have a perfect card to put there. All the cards you'd put there, you kind of want to keep in your hand. Maybe 5, 7, 6, 6, and 6. You might think 2 makes it more of an up-down game, but I actually think it doesn't in practice. It just gives 1 safety for free, and then there's actually often fewer up-down interactions, or not more. I would be drawn to 6, but I'm not sure. I think this might be a tricky position to play. I would not be shocked if we see 8, 6, 7, 2, and 5 just going for big synergies. And it doesn't really set Vid up at all, so that might be a really promising option, actually. I tend not to like the slash very much in open, and I do like it a lot in closed, but here it looks like it gives a lot of synergies to 5766 and doesn't concede any combo potential to Vid, actually. Just none, except I guess 3857 2. So it does concede 1. All right, so we do see a move in 6. We see it with 1868, which my inclination was to hold on to so as not to give up safety in 9. So my immediate instinct for Vid is 2678 in 9. But there's, of course, a huge cost to going in 9. As soon as you go in 9, I can play an 8, but I just gave up my card for 8. So actually, maybe 2876 and 9 is fine. And if 8764 and 4, you might have 3857 and 1, flipping it, and both cards are safe. The other main square I tend to check if I'm on second turn here is, do you have something in 8? But the critical thing for 8 to do is set up 5. It's not to set up 9, because 9 is so valuable your opponent is likely to take it. Here, now that Addy has given up leftward strength, though, 4 is probably a better move than 8. I am a famed hater of 4. But 4 has some appeal. For instance, anything Addy puts in 1 is comboed by 3857 in 2. Now you got to make sure that's not comboed back, which it could be if you put 2678 in 4, because then 5766 would have the same, but wouldn't be if you put 4487, for example, in 4. So you get pretty good control of 1. You are on second turn, so sometimes that doesn't matter. They just fill out the rest of the board, and then when they finally play in 1, you just don't have the card to stop them. But you could play in 4 saying you control 1, and 3857 is pretty decent. And a bunch of squares, actually. Because 3857 can also combo anything that lands in 5. Yeah. Interesting idea. So maybe 4 is good here. I'm still skeptical. I always doubt in 4. But with no threat in 8, blocking 4 makes a lot of sense, and you have some good control of some other squares on the board. So 4 and 9 are probably the main 2 candidate moves. Some people really like to go in 1 in these positions. You do have safety there. 8-5, 8-1, and 1. Not necessarily so bad. It does feel like if you played that, 1 is nice to have in response to 4. So playing 1 kind of gives up on controlling 4. It's not my kind of move, but I'm not sure it loses. All right, we do see 4. We see it with 8-5, 8-1, which makes some sense to keep side-to-side power. Was not a card I'd really considered there, but certainly makes sense. But you could see running out of up power now. So like if you count out, say, 8, 7, 6, 4, and 1, then Addy is up 6-4. I guess you have the huge combo in 2, so it doesn't matter. Something about this, I'm skeptical. But maybe I shouldn't be. It's the lack of ups, I think, that's getting me. So here's an idea. What if Addy played 8, 7, 6, 4, and 2? And my plan is, if you go 1, I'm obviously threatening a plus in 5, but you can combo that plus back. You have 8, 4, 4, 8, 7, and 8. But my idea is if you go in 1, I go in 9 with 8, 6, 7, 2. And 5, 7, 6, 6 now still has the threat in 5, but also anything you put in 5, I can combo from 8. Because 5, 7, 6, 6, I noticed, covers any card you put in 5 from 8. It can same a 5, it can plus a 7. So 8, 7, 6, 4, and 2 looks interesting to me. I think you have to block 5. Probably sooner rather than later. But I think there I can just play 8. And I think I go up and up. All right, I haven't counted that out, but I think 8, 7, 6, 4, and 2 might be really powerful. That's my inclination here. 5, 7, 6, 6, weirdly dominant sweeper. You're trying to fill up 1 and 9 in the next 2 moves. So they got to kind of block at least 1 of 5 or 8. One nice thing about 8, 7, 6, 4, and 2 is it's actually safe to 5. So if they go 8, you could actually, maybe in some worlds go 1. The reason it probably doesn't work is because you just don't have very good play in 1. Yeah, so maybe they can block 8 and hold. Oh well, still a neat idea. Okay, Addy goes 9. He has kept two very similar cards for this endgame, possibly punishable. So if we see 4874 in 8, then Vid will go up 6-4. And Addy is going to play 8-6-7-2 and 5, making it 5-5, and with the point that that card is weak to 4. So if he can land 8-7-6-4 and 4 in 1, he's gonna win. He's gonna combo back whatever needs comboing. So Vid has to block 1. Addy goes in 2, but Addy has no captures in 2. So that looks like a tie unless I'm missing something, which I often am. But my guess would be that's a tie. I don't see why Vid would go 5 or 2 off the top of the head. We just looked at a Vid game where Frodo found a really nice move in 5 in this kind of structure, so it's not to rule it out completely. But I think this is a worse position for it than that was. But very nice move by Frodo. So the other option is 1. And 1 is potentially appealing. It looks weird from a kind of take a step back fundamental perspective, because you're like, Addy's cards want to go up and down. What am I going to do? I'm going to make the game as up and down as possible. But you definitely want to be checking 1 and 8. 8 to me looks like a tie, and you definitely can't win an 8 because of that 8-6-7-2 and 5 move where you can't touch it, and you just have to make sure they can't touch anything either. Oops, sorry, I just need the table under the screen. So if Vid has any winning chances, it's in 1. Where his whole board is safe. But those 8-6s have a bunch of power. So if you go 1, I think Addy plays 8-7-6-4 and 8. And then you have 3-8, 5-7, and 5, and you get your tie. So I guess that should... Wait, that doesn't flip anything. What am I talking about? So you go 1, 8-7-6-4 and 8. You have no captures. You are getting swept. Okay, I can count. All right, so... Yeah, so you can't go 1. You got to go 8. All right, so this was a good try of Addy's because I didn't find a win. So a tie that makes it tricky for your opponent is the best you're going to get. He does go 8. We do see the move in 5. Vid will block 1, and we will have a tie. Nice game. Interesting game. And you can also see that maybe I was wrong and Addy was right about which card should go in 6. It's possible every move Addy played is just a bit better than the one I suggested. I'm not sure. I really liked keeping the power side to side that the 1-8-6-8 had, being able to threaten the card in 7, being able to control 9. But we also saw that key variation where the 5-7-6-6 just swept everything. So maybe... And we also saw a bunch of variations where 1-8-6-8 having that 8 facing left made it safe, which 5-7-6-6 would have never been. So Addy may well have made the clearly better choice there, and his move in 9 was maybe more pressure than my ideas in 2. Probably more pressure. So yeah, nice game. And we see a tie. And Vid at the other side made a hand work where he had just very little up power in a game where he immediately had to face a corner at the top of the board, which can be really hard to make work, and I often struggle with. It's tough playing a directionally confused hand. And if you can get through those first few moves, it often comes down to specifics, and you can make it work move by move. But vaguely from the start, it can be really difficult to get that working. And I think the opposite corners here was pretty effective. And we did see the move in 4 specifically making it clear you're having trouble going left. I can play against your directional weakness just as you can play against mine. All right, what else we got? I'm just clicking through chat, seeing if anything's out. Okay, so we have this game. Presumably they will play again shortly. If they don't start. There we go. All right, well, let's keep this the same video. Okay, so Vid has first turn this time. We look at Vid's hand. We see a lot of up-down power, so we switch from left-right to up-down. That's probably a decent thing about the decks, because sometimes you worry, oh, the deck might be all up-down cards, or sorry, side-to-side cards. But no, there's a lot of up-downs here. The first thing I would do as Vid is, of course, look at the opponent's hand and check their directional weaknesses. And they have an 8 in each direction except to the left. But they can deal very well with our 8-8 corner, so that doesn't really give a clear option. I don't like Vid's hand. I'd be pretty uncomfortable starting here. Just skimming for ideas. Another thing to check is where do they have limited numerical power? Like they might have a high number, but they might not have another high number. So one thing to note is like the 8 to the right on 3847 comes with a 7 to the left. Could we hit that backside? Yeah, we could with 1885. So maybe there's some way to hit that. I also notice if we played something like 6674 somewhere, their only capture of the 6 is 3847, and we have that 8 on the backside covered by 7486. And if we go 6647, we also have the 8581 covered. But they will always have alternate captures, and we don't really have those covered. But I think I'd be really tempted to start with 6674 in either 1 or 7, trying to take advantage of a potential left weakness. Now, it might be too easy to set up against. It's possible this is just a bad idea. Like maybe some like 8366 and 5 sets up 4686 with the same and 2. Or if we go 7, that 4686 and 5 sets up 8366 with the same. But I don't think it sets up anything else. And so I think there's play in both situations. I wouldn't be too worried about one same. So that would be my inclination. I think we want to be on the left side of the board. It's just a little clumsy because our hand is so much more up-down. That also leads to thinking, can you just play in 2 or 8 and force the game into up-down land? And if you were going to do that, your 7-5-8-5 is really important at controlling 8s facing down. But the problem is, all your cards have 8s facing down. So if you play in 2 and say, hey, I can take anything you put in 1 or 3, can't necessarily play in 1 or 3 myself, then maybe I can get something in 3, but at least I can take anything you play. You really can't take anything they play, because if they play with a 6 down, you can't flip it without an 8 down, and you're just murdered by 8366. So I think forcing an up-down game by playing in 2 or 8 is just not going to be very feasible. Similarly, with a hand that is this committed to up-down, like you certainly don't want to play in 4 or 6. It's just going to be a nightmare for the rest of your cards. But you also don't want to play in 5, because your opponent can then play in 4 or 6, and again, you're going to be forced into a side-side game, and your remaining cards are just going to feel horrifically bad. So I think you're quite quickly, you're going to start in 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, or 9. And I don't see how to make 2 or 8 work. And looking at the hand, it looks pretty balanced left to right, same total power, and a higher maximum number going right. But it beats your opponent's hand more frequently going left. So my inclination would be 1 or 7. Yeah, I'm just reasoning myself to 6, 6, 7, 4, and 1 or 7 again. Instead, we see 3. Now, if we look at what the captures are on that, almost anything that captures it from 2, obviously you'd recapture in 6, but pretend 6 is out of the picture. Your capture of that card in 2 from 1 is 1885, and that's an uncomfortable card to be committed to. I think Addy should be able to get some advantage here. Now, if Addy wants to make it a side-to-side game, I'd be tempted to go in 9. This is a point where Vid's move may have an advantage over mine, because he actually does have big capturing power facing towards 9. Even if 1885 can never be good as a corner, it can be good attacking stuff. I think going 1 also, like, the game's going to fill out somewhat up down, but it's also going to have a lot of side to side implications as that happens. So but I'd be tempted towards 9, in part because we don't currently have 6, and I like to have every square. I'm greedy that way. Now we actually don't have a great way to play in 9 setting up 6. Fair point. I hear you. There's also the question of, do we want to set up in 5? Which we don't have incredible ways to do either. Maybe this is a nice starter. Yeah, it creates some difficulty in the position. It is recapturable. Sure. So I think what I'd do if I was Addy is I think I'd just take it. I think I'd take it with a big clunker like 4686. And I'd say, you don't have 1 because I same plus wall you in 4. And if you go in 6, I'm going to play in 1 with 8581. No, I'm not. Your 6674 covers that. See, what I was thinking was I got the 7585 out of your hand, so now I can play in 1 safely with an 8 down. But I cannot. So that was a bad idea. I could play in 1 with 5766, because then you're only capturing 4 as 7486, and I have combo play against that. But that gets really dicey, because 7486 sets you up in 5, 1885 now lands in 5 well. So this isn't as clean an idea as I thought. Alright, he does take, and we very quickly, which was where I was leaning, though I hadn't gotten to this card, Vid goes in 8, because Vid is a lunatic. I think that's the only explanation we've got. Let's ask some questions. Does this set up 5? No. Does this give up all potential to play in 1 at a later date? Kinda, yeah. Weird move. You know, there is that synergy in 9 for the plus wall, but that synergy doesn't, like, matter. It's not going to combo anything extra. It is simply saying, I can recapture this. But how excited are you to be able to recapture this? I don't know, man. I don't get it. I don't necessarily have another recommendation here, but very weird move, which we will describe as of the vid style. I will say, the only time I've had this in a important game in the return was against Seto, where he played a corner, sort of mid-strength corner. I took it, and he played on the far side from where I'd played, and I immediately collapsed and lost horribly, and, you know, was thoroughly confused by the moves. This is not to rule this type of move out of hand. This is to say, I do not see this type of move coming, and this seems very strange to me. I think what Vid is saying is, I am going to make the game up down. But I don't know, man. I think I'd be tempted to block 5 if I was Addy, just to make sure 2 is safe. Vid is final turn. I could see him being able to play off some of these numbers, but he doesn't really have great sweepers. I don't know. I'd probably play like, I don't know, 5, 7, 6, 6, and 5. If Vid goes in 6, then you just capture that from 9. He locks in 3, but you get 6 and 9, and your cards in 2 and 5 are safe. So unless I'm being completely oblivious and you're just swept in some weird endgame I haven't considered, you're doing great. And if you go 5 and they go 1, sure, they can hit your many 8s down, but you still have a 6 facing down to dodge some stuff. I feel like you should be able to find some ways to slide around there. But maybe that holds. Maybe that actually holds. Maybe 5 is well met by 1. I was going to say if they go 7, then I think you have a lot of room to work with. But maybe that actually has a chance to hold as well. Okay, maybe 5's not so clear. He does go 5. Okay. I was going to say if you're going to move past 5, because I think 5 works really well if the right of the board fills up, but not as well if you get a Z or T. Or at least I'm potentially worried that, like, I don't know, what's the best example? 6, 6, 7, 4, and 1 ties set. You are down 7-3. But you're kind of guaranteed some captures. Maybe not enough. 7, 4, 8, 6 is a bit dead. Okay, so say 7, 4, 8, 6 now, but then they have captures that aren't covered. Yeah, okay, 1 doesn't look like it worked. No, this looks better than I was giving it credit for. Okay, what about 6, 6, 7, 4, and 7? Makes it 6, 4. 8 is safe. It's really hard for them to go in 4 because you have a lot of combo potential against that. Like 4, 6, 8, 6 is hit by 7, 5, 8, 5. So they probably have to start on the right. You're going to be able to win a card back there. And 7, 4, 8, 6, you're not going to die on the right, left. Yeah, so I think 6, 6, 7, 4 in 7 should hold. So I was thinking, if 5 doesn't win, maybe you go in 6 instead. Try to pair 5 and 9 and reach one of those positions where you're going to have a card safe in 2, and you'll have an extra card of 3, 6, 9 column. Maybe 6 was the way? I'm not sure. Alright, so almost certainly we did see 6, 6, 7, 4, and 7. But I wish I had reloaded faster rather than tried to think this through. But we can. My guess is 6, 6, 7, 4, 7, 8, 5, 8, 1, 6, captured by 7, 5, 8, 5, 9, and then 4, 6, 8, 6, 4. No. Why are those cards blue? Yeah, no, blue, because Vid had last turn. Yeah. Yeah. 4, 6, 8, 6, 4, and 7, 4, 8, 6, 1. Yeah, I think the move order this game in entirety was 3, 2, 8, 5, 7, 6, 9, 4, 1. Tie. Interesting game. Again, one where you have the feeling there might have been something somewhere, but I didn't see it, and I can't complain about anything that was done except that Vid is a lunatic who gets away with everything. All right, we'll do another video for the next game.